Penuh hormat dan takzimnya majlis mempersilakan Yang Berbahagia Datuk Haji Datuk Rosmadi bin Datuk Sulai, Ketua Pegawai Penyelaras Sekretariat Sabah Maju Jaya, Jabatan Ketua Menteri untuk menyampaikan ucap tamu bertajuk Blue Economy for Sabah. Dipersilakan.
Terima kasih pengacara majlis. Assalamualaikum. Selamat pagi. Salam sejahtera. Salam Malaysia Madani. Salam Sabah Maju Jaya. All protocol observed. Jadi salutation tidak payah sebut satu-satu. Dan keynote address saya bukanlah seperti biasa saya akan baca teks dan sebagainya, tapi hari ini saya akan bercerita mengenai dengan ekonomi biru. Jadi kita buat santai supaya semua boleh faham, ibu yang ada di sana dari Asia Foundation bisa faham karena dia pakar bahasa Indonesia. Okay, and let's talk about blue economy. Benda ini bagi kita di Sabah barangkali benda yang baru. Tetapi di United Nations sudah bermula sejak 2012 lagi. Asian countries pick up in 2018. Indonesia sudah ada framework blue economy. Malaysia masih merangka blue economy. Dan terima kasih Datuk Sofian bagi tahu saya tadi, rupanya Sabah mendahului nasional dalam membuat kerangka ekonomi biru. Baru kemarin dia dengan APU. Dan kita dalam bajet, kita sudah masukkan blue economy. Di peringkat nasional baru kemarin sedang dibincang. But forget all those things, let's concentrate on our journey first. Macam mana kita menjana pemikiran ekonomi biru. Saya, Ramli, Izwan dan Fik bagi briefing kepada Ketua Menteri mengenai dengan menoktakan miskin tegar. Dan apabila kita present to the Chief Minister sebelum diangkat ke Kabinet, it's boiled down to orang Sabah bilang usin, duit. Jadi yang amat berhormat Ketua Menteri kata, cari puncak baru dalam menjana ekonomi negeri Sabah. Then quickly, I think around 5 minutes, I said, Sir, can I present to you mengenai dengan potensi untuk menerokai laut kita. So I said, okay. Then after that, kita bagi briefing, quick dalam masa 5 minit, dia kata, I give you 2 weeks to come up with the paper and present it to the cabinet. And pada 8 Oktober, kita present to the cabinet. I must say that I'm not an economist. Saya bukan planner. I have no qualification at all when we talk about economy. I'm just an administrator for the past 43 years. Dia bilang 42 years. 42 tahun. Dan kita bentangkan di kabinet untuk mendapat endorsement. Kabinet pada 8 hari bulan Oktober kata yes, we are going for it. And now kita berada di sini. Why? Kita kena tanya. Karena kami perlu bantuan daripada Datuk-Datuk, Tan Sri, tuan-tuan, puan-puan bagi kami input supaya framework yang kita akan lakar nanti ini menjadi panduan bukan saja untuk negeri tetapi untuk nasional dan juga untuk generasi akan datang. Dan kita masih ada keraguan at that time, how fast we can move. Then suddenly, pada 24 November, Yang Berhormat Menteri Kewangan mengumumkan di Dewan bahwa blue economy is a new frontier for the Sabah in term of economy. Dan juga menyatakan bahwa kita kena adakan international conference on this subject. So, my teams di Sabah Maju Jaya, kami ada 18 orang saja, orang Sabah bilang bekakai. What are we going to do? Now the instruction is already there. Saya ada opportunity untuk berbincang dengan beberapa rakan-rakan strategik, Asia Foundation. Our co-sponsor today ada di sini. Orang ada dia putih, tapi dia fasih berbahasa Melayu, sebab itu dia suruh saya bercakap bahasa Melayu pada hari ini. Datuk Sofian daripada Maima juga adalah rakan strategik kita dalam menjayakan blue economy di Sabah. Dan janji kami pada Ketua Menteri dan juga Menteri Kabinet, kita akan adakan satu convention seperti yang ada pada hari ini. Sepatutnya bulan Januari, tapi kita awalkan. Ramli kata kita kena awal kerana kita kena bersedia untuk international conference. So, hari ini kita berada di sini. Dan sekali lagi, saya minta kepada Tan Sri, tuan-tuan, datuk-datuk semua, bantu kami. Kerana kami ini hanya mencetuskan idea. Ilmu kami ibarat orang hanya setitik saja. Harapan kami yang ada di bilik ini akan memberi kami input yang terbaik untuk kita kongsi bersama. Apa itu blue economy? Sekarang ini senang saja, Google dapat definition. Okay, this is definisi yang diberikan oleh United Nations dan juga World Bank. Kita di Sabah rangkumkan ekonomi ini meliputi living in non-living things yang ada di laut dan yang ada di sungai. Kita masukkan sungai sekali kerana Sabah dari segi geografinya, sungai memainkan peranan yang amat penting dan juga merupakan sumber kepada aquaculture. So that is another things that yang kita boleh explore, dan uniknya about Sabah, kita ada sistem pengurusan sungai iaitu sistem Tagal yang kita boleh jadikan sebagai panduan kita untuk melestarikan ekonomi biru yang akan kita nanti layari bersama. Now, let me get your attention on this subject. Apabila kita sign Malaysian Agreement, kita dimaklumkan inilah luasnya. Tetapi apa yang dijahirkan di sana sini adalah landmass, tanah. Hardly we talk about ocean. Sepatutnya peta Sabah tidak lagi seperti yang dulu apabila kita sign agreement. Sepatutnya kita dengan lautan sekali. Bentuk muka bumi kita adalah seperti berikut. Ini, maknanya you tutup itu daratan, maka itulah luas negeri Sabah. Karena bila kita menandatangani agreement 63, Malaysian Agreement, kita masukkan ocean, kita define ocean itu is a landmass of Sabah di bawah udinan tanah kita. Tetapi apa yang kita buat? Kita confine diri kita kepada penerukan khazanah di atas darat. Everybody want to get a piece of land, everybody want to get a share on the land. But we hardly touch on the ocean. Dan luas kawasan Sabah sebenarnya termasuk lautan 22.7 juta hectares. As compared to the landmass is only around 7.3. Maknanya lautan itu 2 kali lebih luas daripada daratan. Bayangkan kalau setakat ini di daratan kita boleh mendapat pendapatan kita dalam sekitar 8 bilion net. Bayangkan ada area 2 kali lebih luas. Maknanya easily double. Maknanya 16 bilion anytime we can get it. Tetapi kita mesti ada framework yang boleh diterima pakai, yang tidak menjadi sensitif kepada rakan-rakan kita, neighboring countries, dan boleh diterima pakai di seluruh dunia. Dan penerukan di laut ini pada prinsipnya tidak banyak memerlukan infra berbanding dengan di darat. Kalau di darat dia perlu air, dia perlu listrik, dia perlu semua. But di laut is less. Dan di laut ini kalau kita jaga, Tuhan akan tambah. Surely. Dan Aster dengan Ramli dengan Ketua Menteri kata itu ikan tiada pasport. Sekejap dia di Indonesia, sekejap dia di Filipina, sekejap dia di Sabah. Tunggu saja bila kita mau harvest. Banding dengan apa yang berlaku di darat, ini movement to your neighboring countries, dia perlu kelulusan yang khusus. Tetapi di laut, all our resources yang living, dia akan bergerak dari satu masa ke satu masa. So, apa yang kita perlu adalah data-data yang kukuh menyokong bila akan migrate di tempat kita dan sebagainya. Now, let's see berapa jauh kita boleh menerukai. Kalau kita tengok peta tadi, saya concentrate on territorial water 12 nautical. Although ada yang dispute about 3 nautical or what, but this is what we sign, 12 nautical. Aktiviti kita perikanan tertumpu di coastal area sahaja. Oil and gas somewhere around here. The most that we can go at, I think, is around 100 nautical miles. That's it. But under EEZ, we can go up until 200 nautical miles. And the activity going on around here is very marginal. Mungkin dalam sekitar 10% sahaja. So we hardly touch on kawasan-kawasan ini. And if the logistic is good, we can go as far as 350 nautical mile. Ini antarabangsa punya area. And like it or not, our neighboring countries, in terms of ocean, Vietnam, Philippines, is doing some activities here. But what we choose to do, we remain silent. We use excuses like geopolitics and all those things. But we hardly touch on the economic part of that area. Okay, we recognize there is a geopolitical tension here or what, but that's another set of story. Let us concentrate on economic activities. Then the moment the moment we recognize benda-benda ini, kita akan berhadapan dengan, kalau di tanah kita hanya berhadapan dengan 3 negara, yaitu Philippines, Indonesia, Brunei. Tetapi the moment we open, we are dikelilingi oleh at least 6 negara. Karena kita akan berhadapan dengan Vietnam, Thailand, China. That is a new challenge. Tapi Datuk Supian kata saya, the more the challenge is, the more dia energetic. Ya, sebab itu dia masih muda dari saya. Okay, now apa yang kita boleh terukai berdasarkan template United Nations? Cara prinsipnya, kita ada 4 bidang utama, merangkumi 14 industri. Aquaculture is already there. Budget pun ada dalam buku, budget semua ada ini. So I'm not going to talk about it. Food security, we've been talking about it. Fisheries is there, tetapi hardly we explore up until EAZ. What else? Talking about 350 nautical miles. Then this is a new area for us, pharmaceutical, chemicals, and so on. And this one, to me, is a good take for the state of Sabah, karena kita akan mendapat expert untuk datang melabur di Sabah, dan seterusnya ini high income punya briquette yang boleh menjadi pendapatan yang baik untuk negeri Sabah dan juga untuk generasi muda. And this one, I know, seaweed mining, Thailand is doing it, Vietnam is doing it, dia coastal. Belum lagi seabed mining yang di dalam sekali. Dia now harvesting dia punya copper, coal, lithium, you name it. And we are sharing the same plate with Vietnam in Thailand. Maknanya apa yang ada di sana, ada possibility, ada di negeri Sabah. But we hardly explore. Prospecting must be done quickly to establish what are the things in our ocean. Oil and gas, I'm not going to talk about it. I just want to mention about renewable energies. Datuk Nasir, semasa kita berada di China, maklumkan saya, Sablah Pantai Timur, Tawau, is a good for thermal energy. So, Datuk Nasir akan bentang satu pipa hari ini. Hopefully we can get something out of it. Karena di Sabah ini balik-balik blackout. Jadi ini harap-harap lah. Because saya sudah maklumkan yang umat Ketua Menteri bahwa thermal energy ada sumber di sebelah pantai timur, dan this is another things that we can explore. Fresh water, ini masalah air lagi. But this one is little part kita boleh address. Karena kalau kita buat desalination, ada menggunakan air laut, mungkin ada kesan-kesan yang lain yang dari segi politik dan sebagainya, karena kita banyak sumber di sungai. Sebab itu dalam definisi saya masukkan sungai is part of the blue economy. Next. Infra, transport and trade. Like it or not, Datuk Supian yang ajar saya, dia bilang di Sabah, di Malaysia, 45% of our goods is berlaku di atas laut. Transportation of agricultural product, you name it. Am I right on that? 45% berlaku di atas laut. Sabah, in that, for that purpose, as compared to national, berapa? That is a big question mark. Okey, memang ada sebab-sebab tertentu tetapi isunya di sini ada potensi untuk kita explore. Tourism, being a former permanent secretary, don't worry, Murad is here. Coastal tourism, kita di Sabah one of the most matured in Malaysia. We already take care of our mangrove, we take care of our coral, we take care of our shoreline dan sebagainya. So kita cuma enhance dia supaya value added kita dapat di sana. So hasrat kami di Sabah Maju Jaya, if possible, kalau framework nanti mengatakan mandatory, kenapa kita tidak preserve, don't touch the 12 nautical miles. We just concentrate on preserve, plant more mangrove. Mangrove di Malaysia ini 43% di Sabah, terdapat di Sabah. And mangrove is good for breeding untuk living resources kita. And good for climate, good for tidal waves, good for everything. Dan good for business. Jadi kalau boleh lah, nanti ini kamu yang buat nanti framework dia. Teknologi R&D, kita sudah collaborate dengan beberapa universiti, Universiti Petronas, ada sudah Universiti Sabah, ada sudah Petronas, okay, thank you for coming. Kita capitalize on this. Karena kawasan kita luas, we can experiment, we can do anything. Then, this is a new talk in town, carbon capturing. Di laut tidak payah tanam pokok. Dia evaporate, you capture. Nobody going to stop you. Tetapi kalau di darat, the more you do the carbon capturing, banyak requirement. Sudah. Okay. Coastal, I'm not worried about it. Our system is already in place. Waste disposal, you just protect your shoreline, protect semua, amalkan amalan yang baik, terapkan amalan yang baik untuk menjaga kita punya alam sekitar. I think we should be okay. Then kita akan menjadi exemplary state bagi kita di Malaysia. Okay. What is our problem? Ada 5 saya simpulkan di sini untuk menjayakan blue economy. Pertama, we need a good governance. Which template that we should go for? International, terlampau banyak international ini. Semua pun international. But which one? Guide us on that. National, like I said, sekarang baru drafting. Dia punya framework. Maknanya tiada. State, hari ini kita sama-sama. Please, help us. Bantu kami. Because isunya di sini, when we talk about ocean, dia ada duplicating law. State begini, local government begini, national begini. And along the way, a lot of history around the ocean punya law. Karena kita ada emergency law, pernah perkenalkan, kita ada petroleum, kita macam banyak-banyak. Jadi bantu kami yang dalam legal fraternity, how to iron out all these things. Benchmarking when come to practice. Europe is well advanced. Caribbean is some of the state pick up in 2012, but dia lebih kepada, I call it a singular entity of pursuing a blue economy. African also is a player dalam blue economy. In Asia, yang ada pada peringkat awal hanya Vietnam, China, ada 2. then which one is good for us, depending on the subject matter. Financing, this is the typical framework in Malaysia. You can get it World Bank, but the national have to guarantee lah. Okay, International Monetary, ini banyak yang offering, but it's up to us. Asian Development Bank, hopefully next time around kita dapat representative. Hari ini Asia Foundation sudah ada, jadi mau tambah bank lagi itu di depan. Jadi kita dapat Asian Bank. Then out of this, our take is, why not blue sukuk? Karena green economy ada green sukuk. Kenapa pula kita tidak boleh, bila kita buat blue economy, kenapa pula kita tidak boleh buat blue sukuk? After all, I'm not a banker, but my thinking is that the template itu hampir sama. So this is the thing that we can explore. Incentive, selalunya we are counting very much on federal to give the incentive to the investors. But bolehkah kita pada hari ini memikirkan apa yang state boleh kasih kepada investors kita? Menggunakan kuasa-kuasa yang diperuntukkan khas untuk Ketua Menteri. There is a lot. But we hardly capitalize that dalam bentuk insentif. Kita melihat kuasa-kuasa khas Ketua Menteri sebagai hindrance, penalty, restriction, all the negative things. But let's see that power into a positive side. Mananya menggunakan kuasa-kuasa Ketua Menteri, karena hanya 2 Ketua Menteri yang ada kuasa ini, Sabah dan Sarawak. We capitalize on that, incumbent into what you call state incentive. Then the most challenging part in my thinking with the themes is that to create a new things. Kalau bangunan ada Green Index certification, bolehkah kita juga buat blue certification when come to the economic activities di luar? We come up with our own template. Mananya apa-apa aktiviti di luar, misalnya kapal yang menerukai laut dalam, dia mesti blue certified. But who is the authority? Kalau Green Index Building, Persatuan Arkitek Malaysia, not even a government body award. Halal, JAKIM, dan sebagainya. So this is the area that challenge our mind, challenge our intellect untuk menjadi pemikiran baru. Mananya mungkin ada blue food. Bayangan saya pada ketika ini, kalau makanan biru ini, mananya kita tangkap di laut tanpa pesticide, tanpa apa-apa. Then baru you qualify. Samalah dengan di darat, kalau agriculture, kita certified dia green apabila tidak menggunakan EBC. Kenapa tidak di laut? Teknologi, the same goes with it. Kalau di darat, kalau dia kata tidak guna diesel dan sebagainya, ini dia dapat green. Di laut kita boleh cipta. Dan saya pikir semua yang ada di sini pada hari ini mempunyai keupayaan berpikir di luar kotak. Tetapi kami di Sabah Maju Jaya, kami berpikir tanpa kotak. Without kotak. Karena bila saya tanya Ramli apa itu arti berpikir di luar kotak, dia kata katak di bawah tempurung. Dalam translation bahasa Malaysianya. So I said, buka itu kotak, kita pikir tanpa kotak. Then we create a new set of law, rules and regulation, which in our opinion is good for the state of Sabah, is good for Malaysia, is good for everybody. Okay. Dan our take is 3S saja. Kita mau semua ini selamatlah. Selamat, safe. Maknanya semua yang kita buat ini compliance with everything, safe. Then we try to secure whatever good for the state, whatever good for the nation, whatever good for the generation to come. Ultimately juga security dalam konteks Sabah yang akan berhadapan dengan 6 negara jiran ini, kita dalam keadaan aman, damai, secure. Karena kita comply whatever peraturan-peraturan antara bangsa, dan harapan kami juga federal akan memberi apa yang due to the state of Sabah in term of security. Isunya di sini kenapa kurang security, karena saya ditanya, you do it di luar sana, what is the security? Isunya di sini, kalau tiada activity, buat apa mau simpan security di sana? We have to create an activities in order to get a good security. Barulah kerjaan persekutuan akan masuk. Dan akhirnya, whatever yang kita akan lakarkan pada hari ini, apapun framework yang kita, harapan kami satu saja, sustainable, lestari. With that, thank you very much kepada semua yang hadir pada hari ini. Thank you.
Terima kasih yang berbahagia Dato' Haji Rosmadi bin Datuk Sulai. Dimohon Dato' untuk kekal di atas pentas.
Agak boleh diperbaharui di lautan melalui ekonomi biru. Dipersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera, salam Sabah, salam Malaysia Madani dan salam Sabah Maju Jaya. Terima kasih kepada Encik Egbert, moderator pada hari ini. Jadi saya just straight to the point. I think kita tak ada banyak masa, so I have a slide. I will use English language for benefit of all, not only in this room but outside there, because we are aware it's going to be in the YouTube. So probably there's a lot of people can actually get the gist what we're trying to deliver today. Okay, just before anything, I would like to introduce a bit of Energy Commission of Sabah. So next slide. It's just a quick introduction of who we are. We are the new regulator of energy for Sabah. It's part of the devolution of power under MA 63, whereby we have autonomy of energy. Energy constitute electricity and gas on land. Not offshore, on land. Because we are under the enactment, we are controlling on land onshore gas, while offshore gas under Petroleum Development Act. So that's a very clear distinction between the two. And that has happened since 10th of January this year. So we have become a statutory body under Chief Minister Department, being a regulator of onshore gas. And inshallah, next year on the 3rd January 2024, after a special sitting of State Assembly, we will be also taking over electricity, which includes renewable energy, which previously is under Suruhanjaya Tenaga or Energy Commission of Malaysia, which we will be taking over electricity, and while on renewable energy, we will be taking it over from Sustainable Energy Development Authority, SEDA. So that will happen inshallah 3rd January onwards, right? So basically our role is primary role in terms of regulator. Biasalah, we are governing the economic part, the tariff to the consumer, tariff pricing for gas, electricity and all. And also technical standards, code of standards conduct for the utility and the licensees that we govern. And also safety, of course, safety to consumer at large. Okay, so quickly, that's basically us in one slide. Okay, next slide, please. So this is, I want to share a bit about this. We have launched on the 19th September this year by our Chief Minister, we have launched Sabah Energy Roadmap and Master Plan. Basically, this will be our guiding principles, our reference point in what we want to do and to bring energy forward in Sabah. Yeah, we're talking about 16 strategic initiatives. And I've highlighted here 3 of them which are related for the topic of today on blue economy. You can see from the screen there, first one will be on the new type of technology or source of energy that we need to look into, which is related to the ocean energy. Datuk Rosmadi in his opening speech did mention that in blue economy in Sabah context should also include river, because we have a lot of river. So that means it's much more opportunity in renewable energy in hydroelectric, of course. But let's focus on the ocean energy for now. So the second one that I have highlighted is also on the increase of renewable energy in Sabah. So we have a roadmap towards that as well, and we think that the ocean energy also provide a renewable energy potential there in a big way. And then the third one will be the carbon neutrality for the state and the country and basically globally. Yeah? So that is another part which is basically the levers that we can pull in terms of making it happen in terms of ocean economy or blue economy as they call it. Okay, in terms of roadmap, which can go to the other slide. So you can see we in our Sabah Energy Roadmap Master Plan, okay, 5 minutes, we actually have a very specific target of achieving 50% of renewables in 2035. Well, could be an ambition target, but it will be even more challenging if we include more drastic and significant increase of demand coming from industrialization of Sabah, which we will look and foresee it will be 5 times or more full of what it is today. So making the percentage even more greater in terms of megawatt. So the 50% today might not be big, but in 50% in 10, 20 years time will be quite a huge task as well. But we are optimists about the potential that we can garner. So the other aspect is that on the greenhouse gas and carbon inventory is another important aspect, as mentioned by Dr. Robin just now, about the blue carbon, so mangrove, in terms of carbon sequestration, carbon sink from mangrove is, I think we have, well, the last figure I had was 250,000 hectare of mangrove is available in Sabah. So mangrove has like 5 or more potential of carbon sink to even forests. Yeah, so I think there's another potential of big contribution to the GHG inventory that we have in Sabah. So that's basically it in terms of roadmap. If you go along, next slide, please. What is the potential renewable energy? Well, actually, in terms of renewable energy, we have not even go to the extent of fully utilize even on land. More so offshore. But of course, we have potential to do both. But even on land, we are focusing on land. But of course, we cannot avoid the potential of offshore as well, which will be talked later more in detail by my colleague, Prof. Bakar. So I will just say that if you look at from the map, the most potential comes from the sun. Obviously, we are in this climate. But the sun has some limitation, intermittency and all that. So you need something to allow more penetration of solar into the system. But we are optimists. It can be done through time. There will be a more viable, feasible option of energy storage to actually mitigate the intermittency of solar energy. Yeah? So beside that, in Sabah, also something unique. We have a lot of biomass potential on land. And hydro, we don't have that much, not as much as Sarawak. But we could have a figure of 1,000 megawatt, which will be more or less a good combination with the rest of the renewable energy source. And I've highlighted the part on blue economy would be on the offshore wind, which can be harnessed, as well as OTEC. That's the subject matter will be discussed in detail later. Ocean thermal energy conversion. Okay, so the next slide. This is just, if you tabulate all the inventory of the resources of renewable energy that we have in Sabah, if you tabulate it and you look at the left side, top left, the box in blue that I put there, we do have potential around 1,800 megawatt potential of renewable energy at its stand. And out of the 1,800, one-third of it, which is about 600, is already in plan. It's going to be commissioned within by 2030, the latest. but that means there's another 1,200, right? So, but that one required further challenge to be overcome. And but that is something that we are working on. And that means mainly is on land. But there's also potential on the far right column there. I mentioned about the OTEC. So that is something that we need to do. And I mean, OTEC is the potential there, but there need to be a further study on this. And first, for today, is more like appreciation session for we to continue later after that. Next slide, please. I hope I won't go too fast, but I have to. I have no choice. Now it's left 1 minute. I don't know how from 5 minutes become 1 minute in 2 minutes. Okay. From the National Energy Transition Roadmap, we have a Sabah case, Sabah chapter. So we also having this possibility of looking into all the potential of energy. And for us in 2050, we are quite confident that we can achieve more than 80% renewables, given all the advancement of technology and also the demand for renewable energy. And these two are the driving force. Somebody who can give, somebody who willing to take and need to take the renewable energy option. So basically the idea is to move from 85% over dependence on fossil, in particular natural gas, towards a more renewable option by 2050, inshallah. So these are basically the last two slides, no worry. So we're talking about, let's look at the smaller scale of potential ocean economy or blue economy, offshore wind. But I highlighted in red there. There's some challenges there as well. I mean, there are also higher costs of interconnectivity when you have the wind turbine far off the coastline. So you have submarine cable, it will cost more. So it's not really that viable compared to other options. Okay. On tidal and wave power, yeah, there is potential here and there, but probably the cost of generation to actually install it far more than the benefit you can gather for now. But in future, technology will advance. And floating solar, yeah, I mean, it resolved the issue about land use and all that. And it's also improving the efficiency by cooling it. But at the end of the day, the other flip side of it, the negative part of it, we also have additional cost of installing it to make it to make it float on the sea. So this is my second last slide. Ocean Thermal Energy Conversion, I will not dwell too much on this. Professor Baka will take over from this part. But basically what I can highlight, a lot of renewable energy are intermittent. That's the issue. You have to have storage, and many means to say extra cost. But in ocean thermal energy, it is itself a storage, energy storage. The sun rays to the ocean and store the heat. It's an energy storage and it's renewable. So that's the beauty of OTEC compared to other renewable energy that we can. And in conclusion, I put some figure just to give an opening act for Professor Baka after this, but just to grab your attention on this, there is basically a huge potential of energy, renewable energy from ocean thermal energy conversion, namely for green hydrogen and so on. Yeah, and then on top of that, there are also other spin-off that Professor Baka will discuss later. And on top of that, we can also avoid also looking at a mixture of smaller capacity of other options, like I mentioned just now, when the technology progress later. So with that, I end my presentation. So thank you very much for the attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dato'. Very efficient, on time. Yeah. I would like to say that there are potential on OTEC thermal energy, yeah? And also this could be one of the solution, as what Dato' Rosmadi have said, blackout. Our main person is here to solve this problem for us, and OTEC is one of them, the potential solution. Let's now hear from Yang Berbahagia, Professor Dato' IR Dr. Bakar bin Jafar, regarding on this OTEC solution, which the topic will be sharing us today is exploring potential of ocean thermal energy conversion for Sabah. Please. Please, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Technologies Egbert, fellow panelists, distinguished participants. First of all, I wish to thank the organizers for having invited me here, and I must thank to Dato' Nasir for having urged me to come here and join this panel. So it's an honor and pleasure. So I decided to stand up so that I can read the screen to go through my slide. So I have 30 slides. I try to go through it in 9 minutes. Right, okay. So I'm happy that Dato' Nasir has already introduced the subject. So Sabah has 20,000 megawatt in terms of potential ocean thermal energy. So if I were to translate this in terms of economy, 20,000 megawatts, we could generate 27 billion US per year annual revenue. So you can see the potential, 27 billion just on green hydrogen, and of course the other stream of revenues. So that's the essence of my presentation. So I can stop here, but so I have, remember 27 billion on green hydrogen alone. And I'm very happy today. I learned from Dato' John Loh, money is not a problem. So I have a proposal here. I need 750 million US, right, to generate the first 100 megawatt OTEC plant of Sabah. So afterwards, I'm going to sit with Dato' John Loh. Let's move on, okay? So anyway, being a lecturer, so I always like to go to the basic. Okay, first slide. Next slide. So this is the outline of my presentation. Next slide. Okay, this is the basic. Actually, there are 6 primary sources of energy. 6, primary, the key word is primary. The first 4 primary sources are renewable, only 2 non-renewable. So you can capture them from this. And what is so shown here is that the secondary sources of energy from the sun, there are 6 also. And one of them is ocean thermal energy. And I think many people say, when I say to them ocean thermal energy, the first thing they thought was geothermal, which is different from ocean thermal. So I'm happy to see that Dato' Nasir has shared the definition of ocean thermal energy conversion. Next slide. So that's what I was saying earlier. 6 primary sources, 4 renewable and 2 non-renewable. And ocean thermal energy is one of the 6 secondary sources of energy from the sun. Next. Okay, this is how to see in picture the energy from the sun. It goes through, we have 6 primary secondary sources there. Next. All right. Another thing people always say, talking about renewable energy, they always think about wind and wave, right? Just because the popular literature in the temperate regions. But in the tropics, the large source of energy is ocean thermal energy. So you can see from this to the maps. And we are lucky, we are located along the equator. Next. Okay, this is a definition shared by Dato' Nasir just now. But you read the last few words there. Basically, the method is to convert or to extract the heat stored in the upper layers or the surface of the ocean, and this heat actually converted into power. So you see that electrical energy. Now you see the last 3 words, or energy product equivalent, meaning to say, if nobody taking up the power, what you do with it? So we just put this power into electrolyzers, then we generate hydrogen. That's what I was talking about. This is one. What is meant by energy product equivalent, because you can also produce other product like ammonia and methanol, all this. Next. Okay, this is the basic principle, as I was saying earlier. So the heat from warm seawater, this heat, the moment it is exposed to ammonia liquid is a working fluid, right? And this liquid becomes gas. So the gas is used to turn the turbine, turn generator, you get the power, the electricity. And nobody taking up the power middle of the ocean, what you do? Put through electrolyzers, you can generate hydrogen. So that's the first source of revenue from OTEC. Okay, then the other source of revenue is by utilizing the deep sea water, about 10 degrees Celsius. And the applications there are numerous, at least 7 they are listed. The first one, cooling of data centers. In fact, we have a sea cable running through the shore along the slope, continental slope of Sabah. We can relocate the data centers, put along the continental slope. I think this is a new opportunity, new economy. And I think many data centers operators, they consume so much electricity. So that's one. Or sea water air conditioning. That's been done everywhere in the world. And then the third one, very interesting, cooling of tropical soils. Our tropical soils, the temperature about 33 degrees. So you pass through this 10-degree deep sea water through the soil, you can drop the temperature from 33 degrees to 18 degrees, then you can culture or grow the temperate produce instead of going to the Cameron Highlands, for instance. And the other one, of course, the utilization of the deep sea water, cold deep sea water, for culture of high-value marine produce like abalone, oysters, prawns, and fugu fish. And very interesting, fugu fish raised in the deep sea water in Japan, for instance, is no longer poisonous. So you don't need a certified chef for that. And marine algae that can be converted into fuel, jet fuel, or can feed the marine produce. And the other one, of course, lithium production. Before you make use of the deep sea water, before you produce mineral water, then you extract the lithium for batteries, and also we can produce high-value sea salts. And of course, this is very, very important, the water. And in fact, by producing mineral water from deep sea, it is a high-value, high premium. And I think a lot of research being done. If you take mineral water from the deep sea, it will help reduce our obesity, our blood pressure, and cholesterol. So I think that's good news for Malaysians. Yeah. Next. Next. Okay, these are all the projects throughout the world. Sabah is already mapped out, is one of the potential sources. Next. Okay, that's what I was saying earlier, the area in blue, right? Sabah has 20,000, about 15,000 megawatt on the, actually I got the number, yeah, on the west side, and then 5,000 on the east side. So those are the sites. Of course, Sarawak has potential about 6,000 megawatt. Brunei also has its potential also. So this is what we want to really develop. Next. Okay, this is just give you literature. They asked me how you convert from area to power, the literature. Next. Okay, then of course, I joined University of Technology Malaysia on the 1st June 2012. So I was asked to set up the center. So we've been promoting this subject since the last 10 years. So this was the next step we need to do. So after this, we need to set up the SPV and make full use of financing through Dato' Jonah, right? Yeah, next. Okay, this I would say the best first, I would say project site of Pulau Kalumpang in Tawau. That's the nearest to the shore. Next. Okay, this is a good news. We are talking about ESG. I don't think you can find any fast emerging and impactful technology that could fulfill all the 17 SDGs. That's ocean thermal energy. And this based on data captured in Okinawa, Japan, as well in Hawaii. So you can go through with me on this. And Prof. Shuaida has gone through these numbers. So she also familiar with this. Next. Okay, these are the sources of revenue just to appreciate what been produced in Hawaii and Kubijima. I've already said about and here is, you see on the right, is the sea grapes, but in Sabah they got lato. This is the price in Japan, $70 US per kilo. You know, so in Tokyo Airport, $140 per kilo. So this is something, and the problem is what the quality that you have here, because you raise it in the surface water. So the quality of water not so good. But if you to raise this in deep sea water, you can get this quality. Okay, I think the rest you can hear from Prof. Chu just now. Next. Okay, this is the economics. If you want to study the economics of this, the production of marine produce and other things, this is based on the statistics captured by the Kumijima. This way the utilization of deep sea water is. Okay, I have 1 minute, so can we go through the last slide? Okay, all the economics of the green hydrogen. Okay, one thing I want to mention here is that the price of green hydrogen is about 28 ringgit per kilo. 1 kilogram of hydrogen you put in Toyota Mirai, it can run up to 245 kilometers. Meaning to say, per kilometer, the cost of running Toyota Mirai is only 11 cents. So very competitive. I think we all pay more for petrol. There's a news here. Next. Okay, this is the illustration of different models. Okay, another one I have yet to mention here is the carbon capture, not to store, but to use it for production of green methanol. So there's a subject of Sabah. We have deep water production for oil and gas. So that's something we need to take advantage. Next. Okay, those are deep sea waters of Sabah. So some of you are very familiar. Next. All right, this is to capture the CO2, then use OTEC hydrogen to produce green methanol, for instance. Next. Okay, this is what I was saying earlier. I convert the 26,000, but for Sabah is about 20,000 of that. So the bottom note there, 21 billion per year revenue for Sabah alone. Sarawak about 6 billion. Next. Okay, this is hydrogen you can capture. Next. All right, so this is required investment. So the numbers are ready. So we're looking for investors. And this capital very heavy, per 100 megawatt, but could be recovered within 5 years. Simply because OTEC technology could generate so many streams of revenues. That's the logic to it. Next. Okay, this is the financial. Next. This is the revenues potential. Next. Okay, another thing is that about OTEC, you can reduce the capital of the investment by sharing a portion that capital investment to other revenue generating schemes. All right, next. All right, just for instance, you just charge 1 cent US per liter of deep sea water, can generate already 64 million, right? Per year. Next. All right, this is what I was saying earlier. Hydrogen cars, now mobility, very competitive already. These are the figures. Next. Okay, prospects, very good prospects, multiple streams of revenues. Next. Okay, the conclusion. First, I would say the deep waters of the state of Sabah have the potential of generating renewable energy, at least with a capacity of 20,000 megawatt, or with gross revenue of green hydrogen alone, 21 billion annually. And the required capital investment for the first 100 megawatt is heavy, but this heavy investment could be recovered within 5 years because there are multiple stream revenues. And then the last bullet, as I was saying earlier, the deployment of this fast emerging and most impactful OTEC technology could easily fulfill all the 17 SDGs. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I think I've taken more time than I should. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor Dato' Ebaka, on the very interesting information that you've given us. I heard you very much. It says the potential is 21 billion USD. Who want to invest? Only 700 million needed. First one. Calculating what is the ROI. And it should include social inclusion. I think Asia Foundation, please invest. You can already calculate the ROI, and this problem, no more blackout for Sabah, right? Without further ado, okay, we only have about 15 minutes left. let's hear from Yang Bhagirato Technologist Dr. Ramza on the economy biru, the future economy for Sabah. Yeah. Please.
Okay, Assalamualaikum dan selamat tengah hari. Terima kasih Tuan Moderator. Saya sebenarnya ada slide, but I don't want to share the slide. The first reason is because I find it inconvenient. Nanti patah saya punya leher, takut juga. Tapi anyway, because the topic given to me is very generic. Ekonomi masa depan, ekonomi biru dan masa depan untuk Sabah. So, bila saya tengok balik, semua yang saya sepatutnya cakap di dalam slide itu telah di-cover daripada Datuk Rosmadi lah sampai kepada yang lain ni. So what I want to do is, and also because in the interest of time, I will just go to the final part of my slide, but you don't have to show the slide. Saya akan menjawab di manakah masa depan blue economy Sabah. So pada pandangan saya, masa depan blue economy Sabah ada dua. Satu adalah yang saya katakan sebagai titik pertumbuhan biru di utara Sabah, dan yang kedua adalah saya panggil sebagai titik kekayaan negeri Sabah di pantai timur. Dan saya akan elaborate itu. I will give you a reason why that should be our future. I mean what we want to invest. Sebab saya fikir bahawa dalam mana-mana blue economy is not a sector. It is not a sector, it is an approach. Semua sektor-sektor yang ada di dalam tu bukannya kita mula daripada kosong. We have been already doing that, fishery, aquaculture, pengangkutan semua. But by getting blue economy, that is a new approach. Macam framework baru lah, how we can consolidate everything. So we can get it more efficiently lah in terms of growth and also in terms of sustainability for our environment. So, saya ada dua. Kalau yang kedua tu saya tidak sempat sentuh pun tidak apalah, tidak penting sangat. Sebab saya rasa this is more about we discuss how we want to approach it. So, saya kata titik pertumbuhan biru di utara, iaitu saya lihat kepada kawasan Kudat dan daerahnya. Ada 4 daerah di sana, ataupun 5 lah termasuk daerah kecil. Bangi, Kudat, Kota Merudu, Kota Belud dan juga Pitas. Ya. Kenapa di sana boleh menjadi titik pertumbuhan biru, ekonomi biru bagi negeri Sabah? Because we have everything there in terms of ingredient. Kita ada local resources yang ada di sana. Kita ada banyak galian di sana, termasuk yang paling berharga sekarang ni sedang ni silika dan juga yang lain-lain. Kita juga ada pertanian di sana, kita juga ada perikanan, and we also have the landscape and the aesthetic maritime untuk pelancongan dan sebagainya. Dan di dalam Pelan Pembangunan Struktur Sabah 2033 juga, tempat itu akan, salah satu pelabuhan akan dibangunkan di Kudat tu. So basically based on this planning dan ingredient, we have everything. So I think if we really want to find a model, sebab kita kata this is a new approach, and normally new approach we cannot do it everywhere because definitely we don't have the resources in terms of finance, also in terms of mental energy juga. Dan kenapa saya katakan di sana? Okey, kita semua ada dia punya resources itu. Termasuklah potensi masa depan pelabuhan. Saya minta maaf lah, walaupun kita ada POIC di timur Sabah dan kita kata itu juga adalah antara laluan yang penting, tapi sebenarnya kalau kita bandingkan dengan Kudat di sana, dia lebih terdedah kepada laluan antara bangsa tu kan. And also it is the center when it comes to BIMP Biaga. So in terms of geopolitik dia dan juga geoekonomi itu, it is more strategic. Now, antara lagi sebab penting, kenapa blue economy perlu mungkin kita halakan di situ, selain daripada all the ingredient, the natural ingredient we have, we also need to remember that the 4 district, including the sub-district yang ada di sana adalah merupakan daerah paling miskin, bukan saja di Sabah tapi di Malaysia, termasuk yang 10 paling miskin di Malaysia dan of course di Sabah juga antara yang paling miskin. Pitas, Kota Merudu, Kudat, Kota Belud. Okay. Now, apakah kaitannya blue economy dengan kemiskinan ini? Sebab kita kata sepatutnya pendekatan bagi blue economy ni, it is not just about economic growth, tetapi kita kata juga adalah protection of environment. And I agree with you, Dr. Bush, that when it comes to protection of environment, actually the most important element is social inclusion. Social inclusion. Now, kenapa kita ekonomi biru ini sebenarnya pada saya adalah game changer, bukan saja untuk new resource ekonomi, pertumbuhan baru, tetapi juga untuk kita mengubah landscape ekonomi. So bila kita kata bahawa ekonomi kita itu bukan sahaja memberikan manfaat kepada kita, tetapi juga protection kepada environment, maka maksudnya kita juga mesti tidak boleh meminggirkan penduduk. Kenapa kita tidak boleh meminggirkan penduduk? Sebab orang yang boleh memelihara alam sekitar adalah penduduk. When we ignore the community, and that is where our alam sekitar tu tidak terjaga lah. Saya bagi contoh lah di pantai timur sekarang ni. Kita ada banyak pulau-pulau yang cantik di sana. Sebab saya buat kajian di sana juga. Denawan, kita ada beberapa taman yang kena protect di situ. Mabul dan sebagainya. So daripada segi ocean ekonomi sudah ada di sana. Iaitu pelancongan. Kita menjana banyak keuntungan dan sebagainya. But we still have issue of bombing lah, lepas tu pengambilan kayu bakau lah yang di situ. Why? Because this community yang bom semua tu dan merosakkan alam sekitar ini tidak mendapat kekayaan daripada yang dijana oleh ocean economy itu. Yang pelancongan tu apa semua tu kan, they go to all these rich people lah. Not go to the community who is living there and actually the one that should protect the alam sekitar. Kan? Jadi kalaulah sebenarnya kalau agihan itu kita buat, kalau kita majukan di situ bukan hanya ocean ekonomi pelancongannya, tetapi betul-betul gunakan konsep blue economy dan mungkin kerosakan alam sekitar ini kita dapat kurangkan sebab kita memberikan kehidupan dan ekonomi alternatif kepada penduduk-penduduk di situ tu. So sama juga dengan di Kudat. Bila kita kata kita ingin membangunkan ekonomi di sana, kita pastikan bahawa benefit dia datang kepada penduduk situ. Sebab kalau mereka tidak dapat benefit dia, maka mereka akhirnya akan merosakkan alam sekitar. So akhirnya kita tidak buat ekonomi biru, tetapi kita buat ocean economy atau maritime economy, maritime driven economy. Kan hanya itu sahaja. Dan bila kita ingin membuat juga ekonomi biru ini kan, yang paling penting sekali sebenarnya adalah kita kena faham, selain daripada kita menjaga alam sekitar, apa-apa sumber yang kita ada di sana, pada saya lah ekonomi biru ini, kita mesti bangunkan di situ. Industri hiliran mesti ada di situ. Sebab kalau kita angkut tempat lain, itu bukan lagi sustainability. Sebab carbon footprint kita akan meningkat. So what we should do is whatever resources that we have, for me, kalau blue economy, it must be developed there. Providing job opportunity, economic opportunity to the local. Satu, kita kurangkan carbon footprint. Tidak pergikan. Kedua, kita bagi ekonomi opportunity kepada orang. So penduduk-penduduk yang miskin ini akan meningkat dan mereka tidak lagi mencemarkan alam sekitar. Macam kita punya, saya bukanlah mau kritikkan. Kita tengok kepada kita punya ladang kelapa sawit. Kita guna ladang tanah yang begitu besar di Sabah kan. Lepas tu alam sekitar lah apa semua. Tapi I don't think that it is sustainable. Sebab kalau kita tengok di kawasan-kawasan di mana ada banyak ladang kelapa sawit ini, masih lagi wujud orang-orang kampung yang masuk ke kawasan hutan yang sepatutnya disimpankan. Ada gajah merosakkan kawasan orang kampung apa semua dan berlakulah macam-macam penduduk tu. Why? Because we are only concerned about, sepatutnya kalau di daratan kita bercakap pasal green economy kan dulu konsep dia, tapi kita cuma bercakap pasal pertumbuhan ekonomi. Kelapa sawit kita buat di situ, kita bawa kekayaan tu pergi Semenanjung, buat industri hiliran di sana, so di sana yang dapat pekerjaan. Yang di sana mereka hanya mendanggung penderitaan sebab tanah mereka sudah digunakan untuk itu, they don't get the economy. Sebab itulah mereka memburu secara haram, merosakkan hutan simpan dan sebagainya. So I think we should learn from that lah. So saya tidak sempat bercerita pasal Coral Triangle initiative yang di Pantai Timur itu, tapi basically for me that is how we look at blue economy. Kita mesti protect orang kita sebab at the end of the day community ini akan menjaga alam sekitar. If not, it is not going to be blue. It will only be maritime economy, ocean economy, but not blue economy. Thank you.
Terima kasih Dato' Ranza atas perkongsian yang sangat bersemangat tadi. Beliau telah memberi kita satu kata kunci, yaitu titik. Di mana titik itu Sabah akan ditentukan. Ya. Oke, kita dah 20 megawatt, 21 bilion USD dan titik. Kalau kita cantumkan 3 perkataan ini, untuk siapa? Untuk anak-anak kita di generasi akan datang. Ya. Jadi mari kita menjemput yang keempat. Kita punya panel yang keempat. Yang berbahagia Profesor Madya Dr. Firdausi bin Sufyan untuk menyampaikan ekonomi biru, memacu dan menambah nilai pertumbuhan ekonomi. Dipersilakan.
Terima kasih mengurusi Datuk-Datuk dan juga panel dan juga hadirin-hadirat. So it looks like I don't have much time, so I'm going to present beginning, middle, and the end of my slide. Alright, so first of all, jadi kita sudah dengar banyak kebaikan-kebaikan tentang blue economy. I think pretty much when Datuk Rosmadi presented the first presentation covered everything, Datuk, to be honest with you. Alright, so bukan di luar kotak itu, Datuk. It was amazing. Alright, so bila kita cerita tentang blue economy, I just want to bring back basically just to recap and tell you again, my fellow Sabahan and also my fellow Malaysian. Number one, we are like, you know, previously bila kita dengar presentation daripada semua panel-panel yang ada tadi, semua mengatakan bahawa Sabah mempunyai begitu banyak sumber. That's why it makes us, Sabah, the economic powerhouse to Malaysia. I want to reiterate this because it's important. Because if you look at the data yang ada dalam DOSM, memang betul we are the main contributor to most of the resources in the country. Right? Now, pada masa yang sama juga bukan itu saja economic powerhouse dan kita ni pun banyak duit. Macam Datuk John Loh juga cakap ni, money is not really a problem. Alright, 5.7 billion kita punya state collection. That was to 2021. That was the first time ever Sabah recorded the 5 billion marks. I think we should give a round of applause to the state government, right, for collecting a lot of tax. Right? Anyway. And then after that, it continued to progress. Today, as we speak, is 5.7 billion, right? That's number one. We have never, I'm looking at the data most of the time, we never record 5 billion. It was 2021. Now, during COVID, before COVID, GDP growth rate was 1.5, 0.8, then negative 9.5, and then it bounced back 1.1, 3.7. Now, it was 2020 after SMJ was introduced, then it bring back the economy to its momentum. Sorry, Datuk, sikit dulu growth. Sikit growth, okay, mungkin Datuk tidak berapa setuju di sini growth, but it's important, alright. Now, and then after that, top 5, Sabah always ranked, never fell for the past 5 years. The top destination for investment. You like it or not, just look at MIDA report. I think MIDA is here. We are top 5. All right, Sarawak, Sabah is always top 5. Now, also, it looks. This is why I want to tell you, Sabah's economy is so powerful. With power come responsibility. According to Spider-Man, you know, remember that story, right? But now, the responsibility to manage our resources is the key. Now, it is not like manufacturing a mic, a phone, or something else. Blue economy is given to us. You don't have to manufacture fish. Kecuali yang Dr. Kerapu tadi itulah. Dia buat, sorry, Dr. Ching, Dr. Kerapu. Adakah dia di sini? Sorry, ma'am. That one will be different. All right, because now what I'm trying to tell you, just like oil and gas, do you need to manufacture oil and gas? The thing is over there, is given. And Sabah is endowed with all these resources, just like diamond. Before you can extract a diamond, you got to polish it. You got to extract it. To extract, then you need technology, you need smart people, you need policy. Now, it's true, Dato', we are the first, to be honest, when we talk about blue economy, Sarawak ada juga, tapi diorang baru at ucapan-ucapan. Kita punya sudah masuk budget 2024 dan officially today, and then of course already set the tone untuk wujudkan dasar ekonomi biru. So Sabah is pioneering. Now the resources that we have is given. It's a matter of managing it. So that's why we need a policy, which is Dato', I think in the good hand right now. You have SMJ Secretariat under Dato' Rusmadi to handle this. And of course, this idea, blue economy, it was pitched before the conference of Parties 28. If you remember right now what we have in United Arab Emirates, 3 things they mentioned in that conclusion in COP, Convention to United Nations Framework on Climate Change. Number 1, renewable energy. That's important. Number 2, innovation. Number 3, whether we like it or not, this is where Dato' comes in, and also Dr. Robin, social inclusion. Why? Economic development is incomplete without social inclusion. That's what the argument. Now, so the framework is there. Now, how we want to move forward? I'm pretty sure you already heard a lot of ideas right now. It's okay. Just like the lunch is given, wait for me to finish this. All right, I'm going to give you a lot of interesting point. Fish in Sabah. Encik Azhar, all right, is there. He will explain to you. Kalau mengikut Department of DOSM ya, di Malaysia, makanan utama yang dibeli oleh orang Malaysia adalah ayam, beras, roti sama minyak. Ini yang dibeli ya. Now, if you bring to Sabah, realitinya berbeza. Realitinya pertama, apa yang diorang beli paling banyak adalah ikan. Right? That's the first. It's true. It's based on the DOSM 2024 data. DOSM, fish, rice, and then barulah roti juga orang Sabah beli. Sarawak lain sikit. Dia tidak ada dia mi kolok, the mi. Alright, which is true. It's true. It's based on the line sikit. Alright, but fish is so important to us. Half of our GDP in Sabah 2023 come from fishery. It's important to talk about renewable and also, talk about technology on fishing. Ini yang banyak bom ini betul tadi, you have to take into account what Datuk Rem tadi cakap tu memang banyak masalah, but at the same time technology on fishing, monitoring on fishing is important. Now, dalam economics kita ada ni masalah dipanggil tragedy of common. Pernah dengar kan ni dalam economics 101 lah. Sebab ikan ini, laut ini tidak ada orang jaga bah. Jadi bila tidak ada orang jaga, semua orang pergi ambil kan. They don't care about the environment because they just want to take it. Now, this is where we have to first have a policy. We don't have policy like what Dato' Rosmadi said just now, right? So Sabah will be pioneer. We must have policy and on technology, especially on fishing. And then Encik Azhar, my short discussion with him as well, Sabah is one of the main contributor of seaweed. This is where the agriculture comes in. Semua orang wanita mesti ada guna seaweed. Kalau kecuali guna temulawak lah, you don't have seaweed. All the foundation or anything, you will use seaweed, right? It comes from seaweed. You cannot eat it, but the extract is very important. And Sabah is the main player. ASEAN is 92% seaweeds extract come from ASEAN, right? Now, begini, tadi tu awal, sekarang tengah, mau habis sudah ni, right? Now, yang di tengah ini, I think what Dato' Rusmadi was talking about, I think I need to highlight that because in the International Finance Cooperation under COP, they specifically mention about bond, sukuk. Now, Datuk John kali cakap memang money is not a problem. But to manage money is important. Alright? Sekarang, so far, there are 90 billion of sukuk bond. Bond available for blue bond. Right? The one that pioneer blue bond is Seychelles. It's a country, Seychelles, di mana diorang generate fund sebab kalau kita mau invest technology, mau ada duit, perlu duit, then that's where the bond comes in. Kalau kita mau invest on sustainable energy, what Datuk mentioned just now, of course SMJ sudah pun ada energy dalam current punya budget 2024. Ucapan mengatakan kita sudah ada 9,000 million generators sukuk bond for SMJ energy. Now, see, the world talk about energy and renewable. So with the blue bond, again, will be a new start to give us a fresh start to again generate money to invest on all this technology, renewable energy, and then again for community inclusion, right? Blue bond, I think, should be the way forward. It should be yes. Jangan cakap lagi, ya betul, right? Then number 2, to value add. Remember in RMK we talk about high growth, high value. Now, Datuk mentioned specifically on blue certification, blue tag. Why not? Social inclusion, Datuk Rem tadi cakap kelibatan orang kampung. This is where the blue tag gonna come in. The more you have blue tag, just like the green tag for coffee production, all right, the higher the value is. The higher the value, more usin we can get, so more money we can get. So I think this is some financial instrument for us to finance our blue economy. Now, last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, is the way forward, how we want to move on. Number 1, we must have policy. This policy we try to avoid. Number 1, bottom up, disintegrated, top down, disconnection. Artinya social inclusion important. Number 2, we need R&D, technology, UMS and UITM as well is ready to do a lot of research. Macam Dr. Sharifah di sana, kan, dia pun banyak tu buat kajian social inclusion and other technology. Oh, of course, banyak li UKM and Professor US and UMS as well. We must be included. Alright? IDS. IDS, UMS pula. Right. Now, and then after that, whether we like it or not, one thing which is we leave it to the state government, the federal-state relation, still important. But to me right now, it's no more an issue because when we talk about blue economy, it's in RMK 12, number 1. Number 2, we will pioneer it. We have that resources, you see, it's given. So therefore, for us to move forward, it's not an issue. With that, Sabah Maju Jaya. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih banyak Dr. Firdausi. Maklumat yang lengkap dan kukuh diberikan kepada kita. Tuan-tuan, puan-puan yang amat dihormati, lihat depan kita. Kalau saya diberi satu perkataan lah, untuk summary-kan semua. Apa itu? Saya bilang macam ni. Sekarang, itu perkataan saya. Yang saya boleh summary. Maklumat semua sudah ada. Semua telah dibincangkan tadi. Saat ini, sekarang kita jalan. Jangan tunggu. Oke, itu summary daripada saya. Lakukan sekarang. Sekaranglah masanya. Dan saudara-saudari, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang amat saya hormati sekalian. Dengan itu, saya ada 5 soalan. Oke? Tetapi saya rasa saya drop soalan itu. Dan saya mohon daripada daripada tuan-tuan dan puan-puan untuk buka mula-mula satu soalan. Tolong bagi soalan yang simple supaya jawapan pendek. Kita sudah pukul 1:12 menit. Oke, dipersilakan satu soalan daripada tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sekalian. Sekiranya ada.
Baik, Encik Datuk Jus Egbert, kita ada soalan. Boleh kita kongsikan kepada audiens, silakan.
Sini ada 2 soalan. Okey, saya bacakan. Soalan ini kepada Dato' Nasir. Okay. The first question, in your view, do you think hydro with dam is the best option for renewable energy and water supply for domestic manufacturing and agriculture as compared to other energy sources? So that's the first question. I will share it with you. And the second one, if yes, how can we realize and convince the people, especially those from NGOs or political parties, who are against the building of the dam? For example, Tambituan in KB and Kaiduan Dam long overdue. Please, over to you.
Oh, ini ini susah jawapan soalan. Okay, singkat ah. Okay, I look from the energy perspective, not so much of the other issues. But like we mentioned just now, when you talk about energy balance, you have to look into environmental sustainability as well. If you ask me personally, I would prefer a run-of-river hydro because it has very minimal impact to the environment. But having said that, you can't have a big run-of-river potential. You have to store it because in any renewable energy, there must be a storage concept. Because renewable energy, it depends on the mother nature. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not there. So you must have a man control, human control of the energy, and the way is to store it. So it's a bit difficult to say that you can only rely on renewable run-of-river hydro, but avoiding altogether storage. So it has to be a balance. Maybe, it depends on maybe the choice of location. What will be the choice of location? Probably you go for the minimum footprint of inundation area if you want to go for storage. Probably you go for the steep valley example, and probably less biodiversity impact. So you have to do all that, and through environmental impact assessment, you can establish that with participation from all stakeholders. So my answer will be yes and no, basically, but it has to be a balance in everything we do. So if I can add some more on other things, can I do that? Just want to reiterate again the value proposition of ocean thermal energy conversion. Okay, for me, it's important to have a flagship project of renewable energy, a flagship that can turn the needle. So just imagine this value proposition. You mentioned rightly fully just now. We have 20,000 megawatt potential for whole of Sabah, right? Imagine that. And we can use that energy to derive green hydrogen at the amount of 4.5 million ton per annum. 4.5 million ton per annum. And if it's about market price hydrogen is about $6, that translated into 20 billion US dollar per annum. And the cost to invest on the 20,000 megawatt OTEC to get that 4.5 million ton per annum is 150 billion US dollar. So it's a 5 years payback. Okay? Imagine you just go for 10%. So you have 1/10 of that. Imagine Sabah has 2 billion US dollar per annum of revenue every year. So that's 10% only of what you do. Secondly, you have to invest on R&D in renewable energy of this nature. So R&D is very important. Feasibility study need to be conducted to ensure we don't miss out this opportunity. So that's my, I try to reiterate the point which is quite important from our presentation just now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dato'. So I will say sorry, apologize to all the listeners here because due to time, we need to manage time. We need to manage everything that's given to us. An important thing, we need to include social inclusion. That is our stomach as well. Time is running out. Everyone is hungry. So with that, I would like to close this forum. And reminded by the Secretariat, if you have any question, please scan the QR code, send to the Secretariat. Secretariat will compile all the questions and probably Secretariat will send to the relevant panels here to get your answer by email or by WhatsApp. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. And to all our panels, please give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Okey, baik, untuk penghargaan kepada panel dan juga moderator, kita persilakan yang berbahagia Datuk Haji Rosmadi Datuk Sulai, Ketua Pegawai Penyelarang Sekretariat SMJ untuk menyampaikan cermata kepada moderator, diikuti oleh kepada para panel yang terlibat untuk sesi forum interaktif kedua, potensi dan manfaat ekosistem laut dan penghasilan sumber dalam lautan. Kita persilakan untuk menyampaikan cermata kepada panelis yang pertama, Profesor Datuk Insinyur Dr. A. Bakar bin Jaafar. Yang berbahagia Datuk Teknologis Dr. Ramza bin Dampung. Diikuti dengan yang berbahagia Profesor Madya Dr. Firdausi bin Sufyan. Dan yang berbahagia Datuk Insinyur Abdul Nasir bin Abdul Wahid. Terima kasih. Tidak dilupakan moderator kita pada pagi ini, tengah hari ini, Tuan Teknologis Egbert Adolf 19. Kita berikan tepukan gemuruh kepada moderator dan panelis forum interaktif yang kedua. Sesi bergambar, kita berikan laluan seketika untuk masa ini. Baik, sekali lagi terima kasih diucapkan, dipersilakan Yang Berbagi Datuk dan moderator serta para panelis untuk kembali ke tempat duduk. Dan hadirin sekalian, seperti yang telah dijanjikan, kita akan berhenti untuk berehat seketika bagi memberi laluan kepada sesi makan tengah hari. Dan para hadirin dijemput untuk ke latest receipt lobby level, resepi untuk menikmati juadah makan tengah hari. Dan untuk makluman, acara kita akan disambung semula pada pukul 2.15 petang. Sekali lagi terima kasih untuk perkongsian dan perhatian para hadirin untuk sesi di sebelah pagi sehinggalah tengah hari ini.